Welcome to a live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. And today, as always, is no exception. We're going to get the legal side. We're going to get the psychological side of Sarah Boone. She's a bit of a Looney Tune, Sarah Boone, and stands accused of zippering her then boyfriend, George Torres, into a suitcase, watching him ride while he called out for help. It was well over 11 hours later when she called her ex-husband, who's going to testify as a state's witness. And then after she spoke and her ex-husband came over, she then contacted 911. Typically, you would do things the other way around. So jury selection is underway. This is day 2. We're going to get into all the details in just a moment. Just got back from court, and I'm going to welcome in Melba. How are you, Melba?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Excellent. So just to introduce the best guests here, you know the faces. Professor Joe Patuto in the yellow scarf, looking distinguished. That's because she is distinguished. She is the Richard A. Larson Professor of Constitutional Law Emerita at the University of Nebraska College of Law. She's also taught at some schools you've heard of, like North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Oregon, Arizona, Rutgers, Seton Hall, Cardozo Law. Next up, going clockwise, Melba Pearson. She's a New York native, and she brings the New York attitude, which I love because I'm from Jersey. She got her undergraduate degree at NYU, completed her studies at Hofstra. She's a civil rights and criminal law attorney working at the Jack D. Gordon Institute for Public Policy at Florida International University, otherwise known as FIU. And the man who needs no introduction, Dr. G explains. J.P. Garrison, he's a PsyD in clinical psychology from the Georgia School of Professional Psychology. And he also, as you know, hosts his own YouTube channel that's bigger than mine, called Dr. G Explains, but we still love Dr. G. As I said, I just got back from court here in Orlando, watching the Sarah Boone trial up close, and I am searching here for my notes. There we go. So they started jury selection yesterday. Some bizarre things happened. If you guys thought the hair and makeup was a wild request, I'm going to tell you what her latest request was via her attorney, James Owens. Will tell you what Sarah Boone wants now when she gets back to jail tonight. I'm savoring this because it's so insane, but I will share it with you in just a couple of moments. But jury selection as of right now, Judge Kranick let everyone know that the pool of potential jurors stands at 54. They need to fill 6 seats since it's a second-degree murder trial, only 6 jurors, but he wants 8 alternates. There needs to be a minimum of 4. The judge wants 8 alternates. So they're cycling 50 more potential jurors in tomorrow. So it doesn't look like this is going to, the jury will not be seated until Thursday, possibly with opening statements on Thursday afternoon or Friday morning. Joe Patuto, to you, does the speed or lack thereof, in the other big trial that's being held right now, Delphi trial, they seated a jury really fast. Here it seems to be taking a little bit longer. Does the time lapse trouble you at all, or is this just standard operating procedure?
Well, I don't know that it troubles me. I'm not sure it surprises me. She's quite an interesting defendant for which to sit a jury. So I guess I'd be interested, actually, Joel, in what the kinds of questions are that are being asked to get some picture of what kind of jurors they're looking for. in the case. And, it's going to be a long enough trial that a lot of people are going to have conflicts or just aren't going to be able to participate for that length of time. I don't think, and there was some data that I was looking at, that they're going to have too much trouble with jurors in Orlando knowing too much about the case and having formed opinions. Nationally, I think the story was bigger than it was in the local area. So I don't think that's the issue. I guess I'm not surprised. I wouldn't have been surprised if it went a little faster, but I'm not surprised it's taking the time it is.
Yeah. So to answer the question for Leo Wren, how long is this trial? Judge Kranik says expect it to last 2.5 weeks. So he is told all the jurors on or before November 1st, and today is October 15th, if I can see that correctly. Yes, October 15th. So it's going to be a long and interesting 2 weeks. And again, I cannot overstate just how much better it is to be at a trial in person. I've talked to James Owens now numerous times. I take the elevator with him for some reason every time. I've gotten to know some of the bailiffs already, and all the other media in there, and it just gives you a completely different perspective, which is what I miss about reporting, is being on scene, which I used to do all the time. So, Melba Pearson, to you, second degree murder. It's a 6 panel jury. I don't know if it's the same case in Miami-Dade County for second degree murder. And it's expected to last 2.5 weeks. I know the state's witness list is at about 50. Will this really be 2.5 weeks? Is that an appropriate amount of time? Should it be shorter, longer? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think 2.5 weeks is a good amount of time, because again, you're thinking about the prosecution has to present their evidence, their witnesses. There's going to be cross-examination. They may want to recall witnesses, especially to tighten up different aspects of the case as the testimony comes out. If something doesn't land right, you want to come back and kind of rehabilitate that. So I could see 2.5 weeks making sense in terms of length. Now, you said that the the prosecution's witness list is about 50. I don't know that they're necessarily going to call all 50. The reality is you have to basically disclose anyone you think you might be calling at trial so that you don't have an issue later on down the line with the defense saying, we didn't know about this witness, we didn't get an opportunity to interview them or do a deposition of them. So, even though the list says 50, I wouldn't be surprised if it was like 20 or 25 witnesses that eventually end up being called. So, yeah, I think for that amount, 2.5 weeks for that amount of witnesses should work. And yes, it is this case throughout Florida. It's 6 people for second degree murder or any other crime less than that. And then for first degree murder, it's a panel of 12.
Love me some Myron Sanchez is coming to us from the Miami area as well, in the chat. Shout out to Myron. When dealing with Sarah Boone, I told Steve Cohen, we've got to have a couple of lawyers, but we've got to have a psychologist on the panel, or a psychiatrist, or a licensed therapist, because I'm looking at this woman less than 10 feet away. I said this yesterday. She's very petite. I'd say she's like 5'2". She struck me as being bigger in person, but she's a tiny woman, and not wide. So she's not going to like fall over or blow over in the wind. But she comes in her waist shackle. They've got pink handcuffs for her, which is a nice twist. But Dr. G, let me just start very broadly. I mean, you've covered her.
Mhm.
I know you don't diagnose people you have not, personally had as a client, but diagnose her for us a little bit. What does she strike you as?
She strikes me as someone who's going to be tremendously difficult throughout this process. So, you look at it, it reminds me in a lot of ways. I don't know if you're familiar with Darrell Brooks from, I think it was a year or two ago. He represented himself. He was very difficult, very hard to get along with, and just every step along the way was tremendously difficult. I think she'll be very similar if she can get away with it. So we're talking about someone who has a very challenging personality. That's for sure.
Yeah. So this is probably, to me, the most interesting part. Again, I'm the child of psychiatrist and a therapist. So this happened the last thing in court today. So we'll start there. James Owens, they were literally, court was in recess. The judge did not hit the gavel. But by the way, Judge Kranick is just seems like a great guy. He's got a great command of the courtroom, very, very empathetic to the jurors. And we'll get into some of their issues in a little bit since we are going through jury selection right now. But at the very end of the day, when it was completely quiet and everyone was packing their bags, Attorney Owens said, I have one more question for you. May I approach? And he went up and you could hear him very clearly. He basically, he went into this yesterday at the end, same sort of thing. He said that his client, Sarah Boone, obviously, is awakened every morning at 2:30 a.m. At the county jail. And then she doesn't get back to jail till about 9 p.m. Because they hold her there until they take other people. She doesn't go solo, security reasons, all these things. So he brought this up yesterday because he wanted to make sure she could get a shower. First thing this morning, he informs the court that she did shower. She looked clean. She looked like she had a clean head of hair, no makeup. I kind of detected a touch of eyeliner. I don't think that's kosher. Maybe I was seeing wrong, but who knows? Maybe it was a jail thing. But I'm getting to the juice here. So literally, Attorney Owens said to the judge, I have another request for you. And he goes like this. He's now asking if his client, Sarah Boone, can get commissary once she gets back to the jail because the commissary closes. Specifically, he said his client, Sarah Boone, I am not making this up, what I'm about to tell you. Specifically, she is requesting 5 peppermints. I don't know what that even means. I don't know if those are peppermint patties, which I happen to love, or if they're like lifesaver peppermints, but 5 peppermints, 2 juice packs, 2 bags of chips, a bag of candy, and either a Pop-Tart or a bag of cookies. Owen said it's going to help keep his client awake, reassuring him that she does not have high blood pressure. And that was the request. Dr. G, you're all looking at me like I'm crazy. I was not the one who said this. This was lead attorney James Owens requesting this of the judge. Of course, she wanted makeup and hair. Now, again, 5 peppermints, 2 juice packs, 2 bags of chips, a bag of candy, and either a Pop-Tart or bag of cookies. The judge said he would call the captain over at the county jail, but could not promise anything because he does not really have purview over the jail. Dr. G, what the hell is going on here? I mean, hair and makeup, and now a potpourri of snacks pre-Halloween.
Well, aside from the fact that suggests that she needs, and I talk about this a lot on your channel because this is true of many people, that she needs a large degree of control. She doesn't seem to have that fear of the court that a lot of people have. A lot of people want to behave in a certain way and feel like they need to color within the lines, but she seems to feel that she's free to do and ask for whatever she pleases, and doesn't seem to have that same view of the court that I think many of us do, and even many people that are defendants in court do. So she certainly seems to fall on the far end of some kind of spectrum, that's for sure.
Yeah, she's a strange pub, and she can't sit still, which I'll ask Dr. G about. She's always doing something, reading or writing or talking, those 3 things. But Lori P, it's for her jail makeup. That's a good point. I never realized that. By the way, Dr. G talked about, she's not afraid of impropriety in the courtroom. Next to prison, I might be most scared of being in court. Just such a serious atmosphere. Someone's phone went off in the media section today. The judge was super cool, just said silence your phones. But something will happen to me in there. I don't know what, but I hope it doesn't. But Melba Pearson, to you, is this a good point? I mean, you've represented defendants who've been charged criminally. You think all these things are so she can create some makeup in her jail cell, or does she really want the 2 juice packs and 2 bags of chips, the Pop-Tarts, etc., because she's a sugar addict?
Yeah, so, first of all, I'm a former prosecutor. I have, consulted on criminal cases, but my, real bailiwick is prosecution. But having been in the courtroom for, close to 20 years, that's not a normal request. I can assure you of that. And generally, yeah, Mac is not, the makeup artists aren't sitting outside for Mac going to give you a full, glow up before you go to trial, right? That's just the reality. Now, if counsel brings some lip gloss for you, and if corrections allows you to give it to the defendant so they can put it on real quick and hand it back, okay, maybe. But there's no glam look happening. Secondly, in terms of the Walmart run that she wanted to do, yeah, the judge isn't hearing that either. I think the reality is, of course, the jail has to make sure she has dinner when she gets back. They can't deny her food, but the extra commissary, that's extra, right? That's not your normal prison meal, because people may not realize, commissary, you have to put money on the books basically in order to buy chips and other basics. I'm not even going to go down the road of other things that make you buy, especially for the ladies. But regardless, be that as it may, you have to put money to be able to get, those sorts of things. So it's sort of like a convenience store kind of thing. So she's not entitled to anything from the commissary. She's entitled to food, 3 meals a day, and a place to sleep. Doesn't have to be clean, doesn't have to be nice. She doesn't have to be pampered, but she should get food. So that's it. I don't think she's going to end up getting her. And 5 peppermints is very specific. Is it that she's trying to make sure that from Monday to Friday, she has 1 mint for every day? Or is it like first thing in the morning, mid-morning, after lunch, after like I have a lot of questions. Why 5 peppermints specifically, not just a bag of peppermints or anything? But,
I'm glad you're asking the same questions I'm thinking. So that's good to know. So Joe Pacciuto, you're watching this, you're one part getting that static in my ear, I apologize, but you're one part law professor, and you're also one part human that is watching this. What do you make of Joe Pacciuto?
Let me say first, I think I'm all parts human, maybe one part law professor.
Good point. Good point.
In addition to finding it very humorous, and I'm sorry, but I do, it is extremely particular. Melba talked about 5. I mean, it seems to me to be very controlling. It's not 3, it's not 6, it's not a box. It's not, I've got a sugar, I need a sugar high. It's, here are the very particular things I want you to bring me. She is, I'm not a psychologist, but I do think she's got a screw loose. That would be my professional judgment of her. And I do think it's just indicative, and Dr. G said this, of how difficult she's going to be during the trial. She's going to be very difficult for her lawyers. Joe, I think you said today she was talking to one of them constantly. I mean, I don't know how anybody's going to be able to handle a defense if they've got a client constantly talking into their ear as the trial is going forward. I mean, it seems to me they have to hire a lawyer just to sit there and be, like a listening tree for her. She's going to be, the only thing that would be, I think, worse for the court and for the prosecution would be if she loses these lawyers and she goes pro se, and then it's going to be, all hands on deck to try to keep her in line. You are right that she feels very comfortable in that courtroom with that judge. I mean, she's been making crazy requests, sending him 50-page letters, for quite a while now. And I admire he has to do it, but I still admire his ability to keep kind of a level tone with her and not get really, demonstrably annoyed with all her requests and her behavior. So she's going to be interesting to watch.
By the way, I knew this was going to happen. I told the COE if I go to Orlando, all hell's going to break loose. And sure enough, it did. Tomorrow, there's a special news conference being held by the Los Angeles District Attorney, George Gascon. And we are going to take that live. The COE will take that live. There's a very good chance that the Menendez brothers will walk free very soon. That's what he's indicated. And the Menendez brothers family have flown out to LA for this press conference. They're being held near San Diego in a prison there. So that's happening tomorrow. And also in the Charlie Adelson case, his appeal is due. And I'm hearing from a source that that appeal is going to be handed in tomorrow. And I hate saying this, but I'm going to say it because it's a source very close to the appellate team saying that there's a quote unquote bombshell in there. I don't know what that means. I hate that word because it's such a news cliche. But we're staying on top of that, and we're going to do an Adelson show somehow on Thursday. We're just trying to figure out all the logistics of all that, which is our issue. But if you want to follow me with this particular trial or get showtimes, the place to do that, I'm tweeting like a madman, is on Twitter at podcast STS. And then once the stream begins, once the jury is seated, we'll be streaming it, and I'll be live chatting within the stream. So, JP, to you, she can't sit still. Again, I'm 10 feet away from her. I'm literally right next to the pool camera, which is Core TV. And three of us are like looking at her. She got into some kind of argument, like a louder conversation with one of her attorneys at the very end of the day as she was being shackled up. But all day, she's either got like a restless leg that she's shaking, or she's taking copious notes, or she's talking the ear off of her second chair. James Owen sits a little bit further back, I noticed, from her. But why is she unable to just sit?
Could be that she's the center of the universe. What she cares about is what she's doing, not what's going on in the courtroom, really. So in essence, that's what matters to her, is what can I do? What can I be in control of? Because that's really what this whole trial's about, is that George Torres was flipped upside down in a suitcase, and she was like, no, I'm not gonna let you out. I mean, in essence, that's the core issue here. So I really just don't think she's that focused on what's going on around her, actually. That would be my guess.
That might be it. I don't know. Although she was looking at the jurors pretty carefully. She looked up a lot, by the way, Dr. G, because a few of the jurors said, I recognize the defendant. And when she heard that, she would look up. Is that stroking her ego?
Possibly. I mean, and it could also be that she has some issue that makes her a little bit more impulsive, like makes you not sit still. Like, as we've talked about, I have ADHD. I have a hard time sitting still unless I'm thinking about it. So there could be other factors as well, but I think it has more to do with just not really caring about the court, as more so than anything like that.
There you go. So Melba, there was kind of another shocking revelation at the very beginning of the day, and that is the state got up, Will J., who's the lead prosecutor on this case, and said, hey, Judge, we just got 550 pages of new medical documents last night. They said they filed a motion in limine. The judge asked if this might be a Richardson issue. Can you explain what that means? And what is it like to have 550 pages of discovery dumped on you during jury selection?
So first off, a misery, because that's a lot of pages that you have to go through when you thought you had your case together. So let me back up for a second. That time that you spend preparing to go to trial, especially for a high profile case like this, we're talking nights, weekends, you're not sleeping, you're not eating. I always call that trial diet, because you lose 10 pounds between the time that you start prepping for trial and the time you actually get a verdict. That's just the reality. So when you've put that amount of work into it, you've already framed out your case. You figured out what you're going to ask each witness. You figured out the order of the witnesses you're going to be calling. And now when you get this huge data dump basically on your desk, you're like, does this upend everything that I'm trying to do? Or can I just fit some bits and pieces in to the structure I already created for my case? So that's going to be what's going through the prosecutor's mind. Now, from the defense perspective, they're going to be freaking out as well, because if they haven't necessarily seen this, which leads to the Richardson aspect, which I'll get to momentarily, they're sitting here thinking, I've got to go through this too. And what bombshells may be in there that is now going to taint the defense that we're going to put forward in this case. So what a Richardson hearing is basically the defense is making an allegation that the prosecution has hidden evidence. They have not met their discovery burden, which means they have not turned over everything they intend to rely on at trial. So like I said previously, with regards to the list of witnesses, there might be 50 and they only called 25, and you want to make sure that, okay, we don't want to have an issue that we're calling someone you didn't know about. Same situation. You don't ever want to have a piece of evidence, whether it be physical evidence, whether it be reports or anything like that, and not have turned that over to the defense. Because if the penalty is, if the judge says, you know what, prosecution, you have not fulfilled your burden, that piece of evidence can get excluded. So, but the standard is, was this violation willful? So in other words, did the prosecution deliberately hide this information or know that it was available, didn't bother to get it until the 9th hour? So and from what it's sounding like, it doesn't sound like it's willful, because again, you make the requests, you send the subpoenas out to the different hospitals, whatever the case may be, trying to get that information. And you're kind of at their mercy of when they send it out to you. So whenever you get it, that's when you can turn it over. So that's kind of what the Richardson hearing situation is. I don't think that it's going to end up being excluded, again, as long as the prosecution can show, like, we requested it on X date, this is when we received it, so sorry. And, the defense has to also come back and say, what's the prejudice? So what is in there that they didn't know that is now would have caused them to handle the case differently, or to take that, force her to take, not force her, but strongly advise her to take that plea, that sort of situation.
I don't want to harp on the crazy request from today on the heels of the shower, on the heels of the hair and makeup request, on the heels of the Walmart run. But Abby Crossing says 5 peppermints equals control freak, Dr. G. Is that accurate math? Does that equation equate to control freakiness?
That's how I would interpret it. Control freak, lack of shame. There's a lot of things that it suggests.
And for me, I mean, I just got to jump in on this one.
Yeah, please.
Especially with the crime that she's charged with. This feels very domestic violence, controlling abuser type scenario. And so all of these requests, make me think that this poor victim endured a whole lot more than we may even be aware of, and we may learn more during the course of this trial. So I hope there's other witnesses that can corroborate abuse or something like that. But to be that controlling about everything leads me to believe that she acted the same way in her relationships. And usually when you have somebody controlling in a relationship and you try to leave, or you disagree, or try to go in a different direction, that results in either further manipulation or, as a last resort, violence.
Or you end up in a suitcase.
So, go ahead, Dr. G. Oh, Dr. G, did you want to add something?
Me. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So I was going to say, another thing that I think she might lack is the insight into how this looks to the jury. Like, it seems like she would want to be on her best behavior. I think a lot of people are reined in by how everybody else is going to see them. So the idea that she's not considering that, or if she is, she's got a really interesting strategy, is might suggest that she just is not very insightful about how other people are observing her, or the impact it's going to have on how they see her.
Someone's asking, Amy in New Jersey, the best state because it's my home state, Dr. G, borderline personality disorder, does she fit the bill for that potentially?
I'm gonna abstain from commenting on that, but there's a lot of things that she might fit the bill for. All
right, how about this one? I got another one for you, since you abstained. Since she's abstaining from alcohol and reportedly liked to drink it frequently, a lot of people are saying that's why she's craving sugar. I assume you've worked with alcoholics. Any truth to that?
Probably not this far away from when she would have had to have quit abusing alcohol, so I doubt it. Yeah, I think it's unlikely.
Unless she's drinking in jail somehow. Yeah, but yeah, it's a good point. Genzo 33 here. Yesterday, Sarah sitting at the table in court talking to her attorney. He pointed in 2 directions. She turned, looked right into the camera, smiling. Do you get a sense, Joel, that she's enjoying this? I don't know if I would say enjoying it, but she looks almost too comfortable. If I was in there, you guys, I think, know this, I'd be incredibly uncomfortable. I'd also be incredibly careful with everything, with my movements, with who I'm looking at. She's been pretty, like from a just a facial perspective, she's been pretty stoic. Like she's not making crazy facial gestures like you see on the body cam footage, but she doesn't stop moving. That's what I see. And it can be kind of distracting because she's literally in constant motion. Mossberg mom here is telling you that she, not you, Joe, has many screws loose. So Joe Patuto, this whole thing happened with this discovery being announced by the state, this last minute discovery handed to them. And now the defense, at the very end of the day today, it was almost like they were taking a shot back at the state saying, well, we're likely going to file another motion tonight. Any idea what that might be about?
Subsequent to the information about the 550 or whatever it was, medical records. Yeah, I mean, I suspect that what they're going to say is it came too late. It's a surprise. They can't, they have their defense plan. They can't just start a trial in a day or two and revamp everything they're going to say. I mean, I'll support everything Melba said about this. I mean, it has got to be at least a major distraction to them at this point. Now, I will also say, I think her claims have been almost like a frenetic jumping bean. You can take everything she said in the case and, and nothing is consistent. Well, I shouldn't be so over, little is consistent with anything else. I mean, she's all over in terms of what happened. In that sense, looking at it from the outside, I suppose I would say this shouldn't be so much of a issue to you because you've got this case that you're trying to pull together from 1,000 pieces already. So here's just another bunch of things you've got to move in, and it may not be consistent with position A that she's taken, but maybe it'll help you with position B or C or D that she's taken. I mean, your picture of her jumping around at the defense table is my picture of her jumping around with her story. I mean, she's just not able to settle anywhere. She's constantly in movement with her defense of her story about what happened.
And that's why you're a professor. I'm not. That's a really good observation. I wish I had made it, but you made it, Joe. By the way, I apologize if it looks like I'm looking down. It's because I am, because I've got a kind of different setup here. So apologies if that's irritating, but that's the way it's going to be for a little bit. This is interesting here from Lumiere. Dr. Spiegel claimed that Johnny Depp had behaviors that are consistent with someone who both has substance use disorder and behavior of a perpetrator of intimate partner violence. Watch them use this. I guess, first off to you, Dr. G, and I'm going to go to Melba, but you see, I mean, it's kind of an odd comparison. Anything personality-wise similar or different between she and Johnny Depp?
That's an interesting question. I mean, well, actually, in all seriousness, I mean, Johnny Depp was very much all about making things a circus and making it all focused on him. So in that sense, actually, that whole trial, and it was a civil suit, so it was different, but it was all, him like smirking and mugging at the camera and like sort of making jokes and stuff. So in that sense, it was him making it about himself. So yeah, there may be some similarities there, if that's possible, although they obviously are ultimately very different people.
Yeah, and he got off, and I'm not sure that she is.
Right.
Jennifer Love Hewitt, love having celebrities here. Will her movements, Melba, her restlessness and all that, how is that going to translate with a jury during a case? In your opinion, I'm noticing it. I'm not a lawyer. I could be a juror. She looks a little wacky doing it. Again, I don't want to make it seem like she's totally whacked out, because she's not. She's just kind of in constant movement, but she's not making those crazy faces again that we've seen on the police interview, the body cam footage, etc. But how will a jury, in your opinion, if they see that you can't stop, how does that affect them?
So, I mean, it could be a mixed bag. I think that number one, if she's fidgety, it could be attributed to nervousness, right? Because as you know, as you said, quite rightfully, most people in that situation would be very nervous, very frightened, very like, oh my gosh, my entire life is flashing before my eyes. So it could be a factor of that. But also with her moving around, it also could be disruptive. So if the jurors keep looking over, like, why is she moving so much? It may start to irritate them, and of course, that can, because again, we're dealing with human beings, right? So as much as we ask them follow the law, leave everything else outside of the courtroom and all of that, people are going to bring in their personal experiences and people are going to bring in their perceptions. So if they're looking at her moving around looking kind of shady, then they might think, well, you know what? If she's acting in this manner, I can totally see her committing this homicide. So I could see that happening. And then also to back up on the question before in terms of substance use disorder, as well as perpetrator of intimate partner violence, the prosecution can't use it that way. Because remember, like Dr. G said, this is a civil case. The death case was a civil case. This is a criminal case. So the prosecution can't say certain things in the way that you could in a civil case. So they can't be like, we believe that the defendant has substance use disorder and that's why she killed her partner. No, you would bring out, different aspects in terms of, what was her blood alcohol level at the time of the arrest or whatever the case may be. But you wouldn't say that this was the driver which made her do this act. Now, the defense could use it and say she wasn't in control of her faculties and try to get the jury to maybe come back with a verdict of the lesser included of manslaughter, which will, mean she doesn't get a life sentence. That's a possibility, but I don't see the prosecution using, those aspects. Now, for the intimate partner violence aspect, possibly, if there are other pieces of evidence that could substantiate that there was intimate partner violence, as a, I guess talking about the tone and tenor of the relationship before the homicide. So that part will likely come in, but the substance use as part of the prosecution's case in chief, I don't think so.
By the way, Melba, is that a ring on your right hand?
Why, yes, it is.
I love it. I love it. But I'll tell you what, you would not get into the Orange County Courthouse because a guy had a belt buckle that was too big and was turned away. And there's a big sign, no big belt buckles. But that could definitely be used as a weapon. And I would duck if I saw you coming. But they run a tight ship. It was unreal. This is such a big building. It's I lived in New York City and worked there a long time. I'm not saying it's New York City big, but it's a big high rise here in Orlando with just a gazillion offices. So the lines to get in the morning, just for a little color, they're like 45 minutes long. Thankfully, I found out today that with my media badge, I can now use the loading dock area to go in. So there you go. Joe Patuto, back to this. The defense has had these 550 pages since 22. I did not know that. I know that they've had it for a while. And basically, James Owens, the lawyer, he's the 9th attorney. And when this was brought up, he immediately said, well, the state obviously saw the doctor who took care of George Torres's deposition, kind of like spinning it back to the state. How did they not see this? But the state claims that they never got the discovery. I mean, do you lay blame on James Owens, even though he's the 9th attorney and it's like a game of telephone, things get dropped along the way? Maybe it was an honest mistake. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't. He hasn't had much time with this case. The judge put her on a schedule when he told her that he was no longer going to appoint a lawyer for her. He didn't give the defense extra time. I mean, this is a second-degree murder case, and I don't know, what is it, 2-3 months since she placed that ad and the defense came forward. That's all, that's a very short time to be wading through all this evidence. And I suspect dealing with her, that it was very difficult to keep her on track with regard to the information they needed. So I wouldn't. I just think, the speed that they had to deal with and the amount of information they had and the client that she is, If they'd had it for a year, I guess it would be different, but Melvin, you may have a different, take on it, but I wouldn't, I'm not going to hold them to anything here.
Just to clarify, because a lot of people are asking, the state just got this evidence. The state just got it from the defense, and it caught the state off guard. Just to clarify.
So, a quick question on that. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure we're clear on that. Usually, the defense does not send discovery to the prosecution. Yeah. So usually, it's the prosecution sending a subpoena to the doctor because of HIPAA rules and all of that. There has to be a subpoena for the hospital to respond with records. So that's where I'm a little confused, because the defense does not turn over anything to the prosecution. Sometimes they do out of collegiality, but they don't. But it's kind of rare circumstances where that kind of happens.
Yeah. So I mean, that raised an interesting point, even further. But the bottom line is that they are, they openly said they're filing a motion in limine related to this. And someone pointed out, and I think it is accurate, that a lot of these records have to do with George Torres, not so much Sarah Boone. But this is an interesting question from Melissa, and I'm going to toss this one to the psychologist, Dr. G. When it comes time to strike and keep potential jurors, do you feel Sarah will be controlling jury selection, or will she trust her lawyers? I can tell you, Dr. G, she is looking very carefully. I can see her kind of scanning the room. By the way, the potential jurors are all sitting in a gallery, and the media is sitting in the jury box. That's going to obviously flip-flop, but there's so many jurors that's how they're working it. But Dr. G, is she going to control the frame when it comes to jury selection?
She will control anything she can. So if her lawyers allow her to control that, then she will. I feel very strongly that she is going to try, unless they said beforehand, we're going to make this choice, you have to trust us. I suspect that she is going to do everything she can to control that.
Joe Patuto, Super Kelly here. What are the ramifications, and you just talked about it, she's moving just like her story moves around. What are the ramifications of Owens putting her on the stand, Sarah Boone on the stand, when she keeps changing her story? He doesn't know she's lying. He's asked, I guess, a question. I'm sure he's got his thoughts, but how dangerous is it? Because all across the board, most people are saying she's got to take the stand. She wants to take the stand, and she's got to explain herself away. So how problematic is that?
Oh, it's very problematic. I mean, they may not have any choice, but it's problematic typically with the defendant taking the stand, because, now they're at the mercy of cross-examination. With her, it's extraordinarily problematic. She's got so many inconsistent statements and so much to explain in that tape. I mean, and maybe she'll surprise me, but I cannot imagine that she's going to be able to keep on a straight and narrow path and take a consistent position. I think she's just going to be all over. They're going to be able to catch her on the stand with inconsistency and consistency and contradiction after contradiction. And she may end up being visibly annoyed at the fact that the cross-examination isn't allowing her to direct, the questions that are being asked, that they may not accept her answer. I mean, it's extraordinarily problematic, but I don't see that they have any choice, the defense.
That's what I keep hearing, and we're going to find out, I guess, in due time. Back to Melba on this legal question here. Can she ask? So she was given this plea deal, Melba, and she would have been out in like 8 years. I'd like to just get your take on that in general, but can she ask for the plea deal right before the jury gets the case after she puts on her show? Is that a viable possibility?
Absolutely. I've seen pleas and I've taken pleas in the middle of trial. So literally the jury was that, and we put on our case. And then, at that point, the defendant was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is looking really bad for me. Is that plea still an option? Right? Because they knew that it was likely that they were going to get convicted and face life. So they were willing to take the 20 years or the 15 years or whatever the case may be. So it is possible. it's up to the prosecution if they want to reoffer that plea, or if they want to say, you know what, we've put all this work in. So if the original plea was, 10 or 15 years, whatever the case may be, now it's going to be 20 or 25 years if you want to take a plea. I've seen that permutation happen. But in all likelihood, I don't see her asking for a plea. I see her wanting to do the entire show. And then once it gets to the end, and I believe that this is going to be a guilty verdict, she will then cry, put on another show, and then use that to kind of extend the attention that she's getting, that she'll still be at the center of this, and cameras will still be chasing her, and people will still be talking about her. That's my thought process of how this may play out.
Dr. G, I sort of get this question, but not fully, I don't think, which is why I'm going to have you answer it, not me. And you're also a psychologist. But HT here, what does this case have to teach us about the intersection between mental health care and law? Or more broadly, what do the panelists, JP, think that this case teaches us about the justice system? I mean, we do know there is a long history of people who are convicted for criminal charges who have mental illness. We don't know what really belies Sarah Boone. Your thoughts on this?
This isn't the kind of, at least from my observation, the kind of mental health issue that I think really negates any of the what's gone on, or makes her not know the difference between right and wrong and that kind of stuff. We're not talking about somebody who's got psychosis here. So like, that's a bit different. So I think that just the reality is that there's probably a large percentage of criminals who have personality issues and who have something in the realm of mental health. But I knowing what I know about certain types of perpetrators, we're doing the best we can. I don't think there really should be a whole lot different for people that aren't completely out of control potentially, or something like that.
And Dr. G, just to piggyback on what Melba was talking about, this plea deal. So she was literally offered this sweetheart deal. She's already served 4+ years. She could have been out in like around 8 years. Instead, she's potentially facing a life sentence. I mean, as much as I hate prison, I'm taking the guarantee. It's likely, very likely to backfire on her. But what is going on psychologically that she's adamant in going forward?
Based on all the letters she's written and what I know about her at this point, is that she sees herself as a victim. And as long as she maintains that mentality, as that I'm a victim here and everything is being done to me rather than I am being tried for something that I did, she's going to continue to stay with that. And one of the challenges with people with personalities like hers is that they can't learn to make things better for themselves. Like, you could say, follow these instructions and everything's going to be great, and they'll just shred it up and throw it away. So I would be shocked if she took a plea deal, even though that would be a great deal for her at this point. That would have been a wise decision, in my opinion.
So Joe Patuto, Prof. Poe, they say that her defense is going to be this battered spouse. We had Jessica Mashali on, who just won a case with a client using that defense, whose husband was, assaulting her very frequently. She shot this husband of hers, I think 9 times, and 6 of them were in the back, and she still got off. But Jessica Mashali said, look, she looks, talks, acts like a victim here of battered spouse syndrome, and says that Sarah Boone shows none of that. But what do you make of this defense? Because he was defenseless at the time. Is this just going to fall totally flat? And why don't they just say it was an accident? She was wasted, fell asleep, passed out, woke up. Why go with this defense?
Well, I'm not sure they're going to be able to go with the defense. I don't think the motion from the state has been resolved yet. She has not once said that I know of that she intended to kill him, which seems to negate the possibility of making that defense. Why don't they go with another defense? You'd have to ask Sarah Boone, because I think she's in control of this. I think that's why she could not get along with so many of the other lawyers before. It's her way or the highway. And that's very difficult for a lawyer. I mean, I admire the fact that James Owens took this case, but the fact that he's got a defendant that he can't control, and that's how it appears to me. He can't control her, and he's going to have to or is presenting the defense she wants or she thinks will work. And it doesn't appear to me that it's going to work, is on her, I think, not on anyone else, on her. And as long as that's what she's insisting, it seems to me they are now following her lead in this trial. And that's, I think, a really dangerous place for defense lawyers to be, but that's where I think they are.
Yeah, and I mean, Melba, what do you make of that? Because Joe just brought up a good point. I mean, from a legal perspective, they may not allow her to bring this defense, as Joe just pointed out. Can you just expound on that a little bit, and tell us what you think about this defense?
Sure, and I completely concur with Professor, because there have to be a there, right? You have to be able to say, listen, I was an abused spouse. Here are the police reports. Here are 5 witnesses that saw me with black and blue bruises all over my face as a result of my ex-partner, or my family members when I ran away from my house out of fear for my safety. There has to be something, right? It can't just be like you're just throwing something out there. So what they can do is weave it in their cross-examination. They can, the defense can be like, well, listen, if someone was abused, could they react in some sort of way, XYZ, something along those lines. But to concretely present it as an affirmative defense, that's not going to happen. And I believe that's what happened in the case that you're referring to, Joel, where there were people to corroborate that this person was truly a victim of domestic violence. So I don't see that happening here. In terms of what's going to happen from a legal perspective of the defense attorney putting her on the stand and letting her go, listen, one thing is clear in all the ethical rules. You cannot, what they call suborn perjury. You can't put somebody on the stand who you know is going to lie. So the way defense attorneys kind of get around that is they literally put them on a stand and say, tell your story. So that way you're not asking them questions that you know is going to elicit a response that's a lie, but you just let the person go ahead and say what they want to say. Because at the end of the day, the defense can advise their client not to testify. They can advise their client that this is not a good defense. We want to go with this one. And it's still up to the client to decide whether or not they want to testify and whether or not they agree with the defense. I mean, there's been instances, I can remember cases in my history where, the person, there was a viable mental health defense. And the client didn't want it because they did not want to be labeled that way. So they'd rather go down and have a criminal conviction than to be labeled as someone who's struggling with a mental illness. So all of these things come into play.
Wow. I always learn when hosting this show, and I just did. Nina Stanek here for Dr. G. Is she difficult, or in her opinion, a real victim? She rejected this good plea offer and thinks she's going to be acquitted. There was one person who said they think she's going to get off. I think she's a pretty good actress, and she's got a command and control. But do you think in her eyes, in her own eyes, that she sees herself as a real victim?
I think that she is both difficult and believes that she is a victim. Yes, I really do think that she sees herself as a victim in this situation. The way that she is and the way that she talks about things, that's her reality, is that she is the victim here. So yeah, I think she's both difficult and believes she's a victim.
So Kathy here wants to know if either Melba or Joe has ever seen a defendant quite like this. Joe, is there one you recall?
No. I mean, there have been difficult defendants before. There have been defendants who clearly do not want to follow the lead of their attorney, but someone who is so difficult that she's gone through the number of lawyers that she's gone through, that demonstrates so clearly in the courtroom that she's in charge, that's talking in the ear of her lawyer throughout, the jury selection process. No, I don't think I can think of one.
Melba, anyone that she reminds you of?
No, I mean, we've seen that in a lot of pro se defendants where they think that they can control the courtroom, control the situation, whether it be due to narcissism or whatever the case may be. They feel that as long as they can get up and get their story out, people will automatically believe them. So I've seen people that had that thought pattern. Now, to say that I think Sarah Boone's a very unique bird, and I hope we don't see someone like her again anytime soon.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if the world can handle two Sarah Boones. M. Ryan wants to know, does she have people there? The only people there are a few members of the media. Court TV is there. Local Fox station is there. And really, that's it. And then the potential jurors, but there is no family or any of Sarah Boone's friends, no one. It's quiet. I'll let you know if that changes once we get into the actual gist of the trial, but that's still a day or so away. Another question that keeps coming up is what is going on with this defense team? I was jokingly saying that she had a dream team that's almost as big as OJ's, but she has obviously James Owens, the lead attorney. Then she's got this second chair, a guy named Tony Henderson. Seems like a super sweet guy from Milton up in the Panhandle. Kevin Beck, an other attorney who went to FSU but practices now in New Mexico. A woman, Shelby Andrews, who's listed as a jury selection consultant, a private investigator, and then another woman who's sitting in the media box with a laptop, who I believe I was told is the daughter of the second chair. In some kind of capacity, she's there. So we're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people, and she has been described as being indigent. Joe Patuto, I think James Owen has said, look, I'm doing this pro bono, but is everyone here doing this for free? And what's the benefit other than the fact that it's high profile? I mean, if you lose, you lose. But if you win, I guess it's a huge win. Is this just because of the notoriety that they can get off of this?
Well, it might be that, and also might be that these are lawyers who think she's entitled to a defense and believe that she's going to be unable to handle it herself, which I think is true, and are coming in really, to do what is the best calling of the profession, and that is to try to defend someone who is extremely, extremely difficult. So I think you can really, laud them for what they're doing. I know that when Owens first approached her in response to that ad, he thought that he was going to be able to work out a plea deal for her, that she couldn't do it on her own, but that he could manage one. And he actually reached out to the prosecution before he entered an appearance, before he was officially her lawyer to get that done, and then discovered that she would have no part of it. And then decided to stay on, notwithstanding the fact that he thought that was her best, the best thing that they could do for her. So yeah, maybe it's the notoriety, but they're also putting in a lot of time and effort from their practices. And I think part of it really is, this is somebody who really needs the help. And, even though she's not going to be very accepting of it, they're going to give it their best shot.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, everyone's so cynical. There are noble people. And I got to say, James Owens, I tweeted this out, when he came in at one point, he extended his hand in a fist bump gesture. So we fist bumped. He's just a nice guy. I don't know if there are ulterior motives. As a media guy, I'm kind of trained never to get too close to anyone I'm covering. So, obviously I'm cordial and I'm nice, but I'm keeping a distance and just kind of sitting there. But there's also, I've been there before where lawyers cozy up to you, and politicians do the same thing. One who I'm in particular thinking of, who I'm not going to mention, a pretty big political figure that was always kind of schmoozing because he just knew if the media likes you, it's going to benefit him. But Joe, what were you going to say there?
I was going to say it's not an either or. I mean, you can come in and say, I'm going to try to do the best for this person that I'm able to do. And also say, gee, if I get some, great, publicity out of it, so it'll help me in other cases, that too. And I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, if you're doing a good deed and you get a benefit back that inures to you, well, then, seems to me that's a win-win. So I don't blame them if they're trying to get something in terms of their own practice out of it. But it's hard for me to believe that that's what's strongly motivating them, given her and giving such the strong likelihood this is going to be a conviction at the end of the day.
For all of those wondering, by the way, what is over Dr. G's right shoulder? That is an octagon ring card for round 1. And I'm jealous that he has it because I'm a huge UFC fan. But I have, and I've mentioned this before, a piece of the canvas from the Conor McGregor Nate Diaz fight, at which point everyone now is saying they couldn't care less. Bernie Haven here. Bernie Heaven. How does the esteemed panel think that Sarah, Dr. G, with her personality traits, will cope with the anonymity of prison if convicted after all the publicity and headlines? She's getting her 15 minutes of fame. If she's convicted and that prison door slams 10 years from now, what's going to happen to her 5 years from now, 3 years from now?
I would think, given the profile of this case and how things have gone, I would think it's very likely she'll be constantly thinking of how she's going to have this appealed and believing that, okay, this is going to get overturned, those kinds of things. So I would think that she would occupy herself with how this is all going to, she's not actually going to spend potentially her life in prison or 20 years or however long, that if she's found guilty, they would choose to send her for. So I think that just a lot of denial essentially would probably be how she deal with it.
Yeah, an obvious reminder, by the way, once this trial, once the jury is seated, which is set to possibly happen on Thursday, then the jury has to be sworn in and read the instructions. Once we get to opening statements, we are going to be streaming it live on this channel. I'll be commenting in the live chat instead of on Twitter. I wish I could do both at once. I don't know that I can. And then if anyone, by the way, knows how to chat in StreamYard and live tweet, please email me, survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com. It's amazing how much we do rely on STS Nation. I always say best guests, better community. Tonight, right after this, basically at 7 o'clock, we're doing an entire Menendez show. And then we're going to try to do Charlie Adelson. So busting our behinds, trying to bring you the best content in all of true crime. And if you like it, please hit subscribe, hit the like button. I'm not going to complain. Dr. G takes like 9 months off at a time, gets like 500,000 new subs. I kill myself, I get one or no. Sort of true. Melissa, to Melba, would Sarah be able to fire her lawyer mid-trial? If so, she would be forced to finish the trial representing herself, correct? I mean, the judge already told her she's got to represent herself until this James Owens guy responded to her ad. What would happen if she cans this dream team of hers?
Ooh, I hope she doesn't. I really hope she doesn't, because, oh my gosh, the circus that's going to result. So first of all, yes, she can fire her attorney mid case. That's happened before in other cases, but you are absolutely correct. She would have to represent herself for the balance. There's no, okay, can I get a continuance? Can I get a mistrial and start all over again? No. She will have to finish whatever on her own. And, if she were to do that, I could see a scenario where she'd fire him after the prosecution's case. And, maybe she didn't like the cross-examination or whatever, fires him and says, I can do a better defense case on my own, which she wouldn't, but she could say that. I could see that happening. But it would be very messy because, again, pro se defendants do not know how to maneuver in the courtroom. They can have standby counsel that can maybe give them advice here and there, or hop in if they decide, you know what, uncle, I'm done. I can't do this. But it becomes very messy. I could see scenarios where she's going to stop and talk to the judge in front of the jury, and then the judge is going to have to send the jury out to kind of clarify things with her. I mean, it's going to be a mission for the judge to keep this case on track if she does end up firing Mr. Owens and starting to represent herself. That would be terrible.
I'm not going to say that I would mind it, because it would be total chaos, and it'd be wild to see her try to defend herself. I mean, Joe Pacino, who can actually defend themselves pro se and do a good job at it? Anyone? Would you have to be a lawyer, Joe?
I would say yes, but I would say, what is it? Is it a doctor who treats himself as a fool for a patient, a lawyer who, represents him herself as a fool for a client? I mean, that's absolutely, you're too invested. I mean, you can know the law back and forth and be very good at your job, but it's pretty hard to separate you from the law when you're the client, when you be the client. So I think you'd have to be a lawyer to have a shot at doing it well. But I don't think even a lawyer really could do it well. Sometimes uh, a client will go, or a defendant will go pro se because it's a political trial, and they don't care about the conviction as much as they care about making a particular statement. And they can do that, when they're pro se. They can, no matter how much the judge tries to control it, they can make speeches as a lawyer representing themselves that they couldn't be able to say if they were on the stand because it would be objected to. So it's tough for the judge to manage it, and it's very tough on the prosecution when you've got a defendant like that, because you want the prosecutor wants to win a trial, but they also want to have a case that's going to withstand any appeal. They want it to stand up on appeal, and with a pro se defendant, boy, that's a hard line to walk.
Mm.
Entertaining for the viewers. Even if this was a TV show, absolutely. But a representation of the justice system at its best, no.
Yeah, and we always, I mean, admittedly, we blur the lines between true crime and entertainment. It's not entertainment. This guy lost his life being zipped into a suitcase. It would be wild to see her, but we got to keep that in mind. From Mary Brown, letting her off maybe, but if she uses abuse, it puts her in jail. Kathy here says, between politics, Diddy, and Sarah Boone, I've hit my toxicity level with ridiculous people. Just saying, I think the entire country, Dr. G, is burned out. I mean, Dr. G, what about this? I mean, the election's coming up. You see these crazy headlines, true person zipped into a suitcase. What is this doing to society? And you can't avoid it because everyone's got a phone now.
Well, we're all a little bit desensitized to how crazy some stuff is. I mean, you think back in like the 90s, Dan Quayle misspelled potato and it was like a huge deal forever. Now it's like people can say crazy stuff politically and nothing happens. We just go on to the next day. So it's like, we're all kind of desensitized to how wild it is because we can all reach out and say whatever we want. So we're just inundated with it. And then we have bots that sort of repeat the worst, and it gets crazy. But anyway, we're desensitized is the easiest way to say it.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and that's kind of a sad place to be. To Melba here from Barbara Bunker, no relation to Archie. Would taking the plea deal mean she could not appeal? Is that what that means?
Absolutely. Once you take a plea, you waive your right to appeal. You waive your right in terms of, let's say something was wrong with the way you were arrested, right? You basically are closing the door on that. You're waiving all your rights basically. But what you receive in return is a guarantee that your sentence is no more than X amount. In the state of Florida, you usually serve 85%, as long as you don't have any, write-ups or any problems in prison, like you're not fighting with anybody, you don't get, additional charges for something, whatever the case may be. You will serve 85% of your sentence and get out at some point and have a life. So if she were to take a plea to 20, 25 years, she'll get the 4 years that she already has served, and then she'll serve 85% of the total. And so, she can get out and actually have an opportunity of, walking around again. But I don't necessarily see her doing that.
Wow. And if you're catching us late, the Menendez brothers, Lyle and Eric, they might have a chance after being sentenced to life without parole. The DA in LA making a big announcement tomorrow, and that's why we're doing a second show tonight at 7:00. And I should mention tomorrow night, Dr. Ann Burgess, the literal living legend, is coming back on. She was an expert witness for the Menendez brothers at the trial, at the first trial. and she'll be here tomorrow night with some other guests to discuss what we find out at the press conference after the fact. My man, Wesley John Holmes, an Aussie living in Tokyo. Shout out to him. Melba, I just want to go back to you because this question came up earlier and I totally kind of glossed over it. So Brian Boone, who's the ex-husband of Sarah Boone, that's who she called. He's supposed to be state's witness, but I think he's also on the defense list. What happens if he's called by both? Is there any chance of that happening?
Yeah, that could happen. So the prosecution would call him in their case in chief, and they'll ask their series of questions. Defense would have the opportunity to cross-examine him. And then when the defense puts on their case, then they can call him as a witness, and then the prosecution can cross-examine him if they so choose. Now, they have to be careful in doing that, the prosecution that is, because they don't want to discredit any good aspects that came out of his testimony for their case. So they're going to walk a fine line in terms of what they're going to cross-examine him on, and maybe just try to refocus the jury on what he said on direct examination during the prosecution's case. But also, again, like I said, it's that whole listing someone, even though you may or may not use them, so that you don't have an issue later on when you say, okay, this is the list I'm relying on.
Shout out to Myron, my man Myron in Miami, becoming a member. Appreciate that. There was a moment of levity, Dr. G, as the courtroom, there is a lot of drama. So one of the potential jurors called in this pool of 50. Thank you, Shane. Appreciate that. I will be on Sean Atwood's channel very soon. Shane, I think, is coming to us from Virginia. I've been speaking with him, but Sean Atwood has a massive following and was kind enough to invite me on his show. And I will let you all know when that's going to happen. So I appreciate that. So we had a moment of levity here, Dr. G. The potential juror is explaining to the judge why he can't miss work. Direct quote, "I can't miss work and my boss doesn't pay shit." The courtroom breaks out in laughter. Judge Kranick smiles, ignores it completely, moves on with the question. For jurors, what is it like for them, I guess, psychologically? Because number one, they're hearing crazy stuff. And secondly, they're giving of their time. And it was amazing to hear like the variety of issues that you see how complicated humans are when you go to jury selection. One person had a wife that had an ectopic, is it called ectopic? I forget.
Yeah.
Do you guys know? I'm blanking.
Ectopic,
right?
Yes.
She had an ectopic pregnancy, the wife, and she nearly died. So now she's expecting a second child. Then there was someone who's the CFO of a construction company, and it's Q4, and he said it was the busiest time of year. Then there's people who have trouble with the language, who are speaking Spanish and couldn't speak English. And there was a woman with a hearing issue. Like it runs the gamut. It shows you how complicated it is for human beings to align to be jurors in a trial. But I mean, psychologically, what does it do to you when you're hearing crazy things and seeing awful video? And I happen to have that suitcase video. I'm tempted to play it with Dr. G. But what about that when they see that video?
Given the context of it, it's a safe place. You're unlikely to walk away traumatized like you would if if something like that was unexpected. So jurors, obviously it's emotionally taxing. It's exhausting. Nobody really wants to have to do it, but I think it's a pretty safe thing to be exposed to, even if some of this stuff is pretty awful. I mean, there may be occasionally things that people really have a hard time clearing their mind of, but generally speaking, when it's really harmful is when you're not expecting something like that. And when you're in the context of when it's all being built up and you're told you're going to see it and you see it, it tends to be okay. So as difficult as it is, I think jurors' mental health is usually okay after they're done with something like that.
Dr. G, I have a follow-up here because my man Myron pointing out Orlando so close to the Matty Soto case. I was on Osceola Parkway. That's right where her body was found. She was a 13-year-old, allegedly killed by her mother's boyfriend. A super sad case. We were joking about it yesterday. It seems like there is a disproportionate amount of insane cases out of the great state of Florida, where Melba and I are, is there any truth to this? Why would that be? Or is it just because Florida seems to be a very transparent state where courts are wide open?
Yeah, Florida streams a lot of their cases where a lot of states don't. So I think that has to be part of it. I don't think. I mean, there's always obviously lots of jokes about how Florida's got lots of craziness and all this, but I don't know. I don't know statistically if there's any truth to that. But yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the transparency of Florida and just the way that there's probably media in Florida specifically because of how transparent they are with their cases and all that. So I'm sure that plays a part of it.
Hashtag Florida man. To Prof. Poe here. From Annie K, always has great questions. Shout out to Annie. Would you use this case and trial with your students, or would you avoid it like hell if you don't want to destroy their lives?
Well, I wouldn't. There's nothing in a classroom I would avoid like hell, but probably not. I don't think that there's much in this case that would be a significant teaching moment. It would be a good illustration for law students about the possibility of a very difficult client that you have to deal with. But I don't know that there would be a lot I would do. I mean, I wrote a poem for my criminal law class that goes to Frank Sinatra's "I Did It My Way," describing a pro se defendants that I would give the class as some demonstration. But I don't think this case has a lot of quote unquote human interest, but the actual legal issues in the case are probably not that unique. And there's a lot of fluff in order to get to the core. So probably not, although it would be, I guess, interesting for the students to see it.
So one of the jurors, another little anecdote from today, one of the jurors, an older woman, said she could hear the judge fine, but she does have some hearing issues. So she was concerned, if someone goes to the witness box and the mic's not perfect, she might have trouble hearing. And then on the heels of that, a younger guy, and by younger, I mean probably in his 30s or 40s, he raised, they've all got their little juror number, and they raise up their placard. So the judge calls on juror, whatever his number was. And this guy just offers up without being asked. He goes, "I have selective hearing. I only hear what I want to hear." And everyone just breaks out laughing. And he's like, no, it's true. My kids can call my name 15 times and I don't respond. I also do not take medication for it. And he was dead serious. So that just put me in the mindset of, man, how do you pick these jurors? I was saying this yesterday. Some seem very thirsty, like they really want to be there. Others are like, get me out of here. And I guess you're looking for something in that middle ground. But Melba from Kelly D here. Anyway, we are all wrong, and she gets off. I mean, we don't know the defense yet, I guess. So it's tough to say. Because one of the other issues was a previous lawyer had talked about alcoholic blackouts. That's another good defense, I would say. But assuming it's a battered spouse defense, which is a big assumption, any chance she does get off? I mean, I guess there's always a chance.
Exactly, Joel. There's always a chance. None of us have a crystal ball, because if we did, we'd pick winning lotto numbers, right? I mean, but I don't see a scenario where she gets off. But again, anything can happen, and maybe a prosecution witness doesn't come across as credibly as they could. Maybe, heaven forbid for any of this, let's be clear, maybe one of the officers involved gets indicted and he played a critical role in the play. I mean, anything can happen. But based on what we're seeing right now, and based on the trajectory this case is going right now, I don't see a scenario where she gets off.
From Jeffrey H. Kaufman, a $5 super chat. This is slightly disturbing. My mom zipped me in a suitcase as a child to stop me from crying. It was beyond scary. It got hot and I started to sweat. I was drenched in just a few minutes. I'll tell you right now, first of all, I'm sorry that happened to you. Secondly, I'm incredibly claustrophobic. I would, first of all, I wouldn't fit in a suitcase, but if I did, I could fit in like a camp trunk, but definitely not in a suitcase. And I can tell you who definitely can't fit in even a trunk is Dr. G. He's a big guy. He's like 6'3", big dude. That's just a sad comment. I'm sorry that that you went through that. That's all I can say about that.
And I just want to add something. I hope that
Please.
you've gotten counseling or something to
Yeah.
help maneuver and work through what happened to you as a child, because that's a lot, and that's a lot to carry, and it can sadly spill over into relationships or the way you parent or things like that. So, I hope you're getting the care and support you need.
That's an excellent point. And if you do need help on a serious note, you email me survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com, and I'll put you in touch with Dr. G, who will help get you on the right path if it's something that's still weighing heavy on you, because that is a big burden. I can remember my own father, may he rest in peace. One time when I was like, my dad was the calmest, sweetest man. But one time when I was 7 and I was driving him crazy, I remember he lifted up a belt, and this was in the 70s. So you could lift up a belt. You could even, he never would have used it on me, but people still getting, today, punished in horrible ways by their parents. So it's a whole other topic. If convicted, to Joe Patuto, if convicted, do you think the state is going to prevent her from profiting? She's going to be planning books and interviews galore. This is interesting because a lot of people are saying if the Menendez brothers are resentenced and get out of prison, one of the main caveats should be that they should not, right on cue, should not be able to profit. But what about that? What do you think of that, Joe, about profiting off of high-profile crimes?
Yeah, well, my own opinion is they shouldn't be able to do it, period, exclamation point. I don't know what Florida law is with regard to the ability of the state to go after any profits that a defendant or a convicted person or a released person might make off a book or other kinds of reports. But certainly there's no constitutional impediment to be able to do it. And as I say, I support it. I mean, I just think that just adds, for victims, that adds another, something they have to deal with, that they've been victimized, and now the victimizer is going to get to profit and make money off of it. It doesn't sit well with me, at least.
Just to show you how I don't have jet lag. I don't know I think I have courtroom lag, but I'm out of it. And I thought we had like another hour left in the COE. I cannot believe that we're doing another show in 8 minutes, but we are doing another show in 8 minutes. I probably said something crazy earlier, like it was another hour and a half away, but it is coming up very quickly. And I know Melba is going to have to jump off, as are the other guests. So without further ado, Dr. G obviously is a friend of mine, a big UFC fan, a fight fan, but a gentle giant. He earned his PsyD in clinical psychology, and he's got a channel much larger than mine. Men never compare sizes, but his channel is much larger than mine. And kudos to him. Kudos to him. I'm not jealous at all. His YouTube channel is Dr. G Explains. Dr. G, what's your final word about Sarah Boone?
For all the concerns about her doing interviews and books afterwards, I frankly think people will move on pretty quickly once this trial is done. So I don't think there's a big risk of that, honestly. But I think we're going to see a lot of drama. And I think that if the judge, is capable of reining her in a little bit, maybe the drama will be minimal. But yeah, I think we can expect this to continue to just be a bit of a circus as much as she is allowed to make it one.
Thank you, COE. I'm doing it right now. Melba Pearson. I love her. Never met her. Never met Pearson in person, but I'm gonna, because she's in Miami. Miami's been her home for over 20 years. We're gonna grab lunch or dinner or something. She works at FIU, and she brings the New York Tude and the New York ring. Ring on her. I was almost gonna say bracelet. There's the ring. Your final thoughts on Sarah Boone, and this you already said is gonna likely end up with a conviction.
Yeah, I'm sticking with that. And I think that this is going to be very interesting in terms of what the defense is going to be, and also learning more about the details of their relationship and, how we got here, how we got to this point. So that to me is going to be interesting, tragic, but interesting.
Mm.
And also, this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So keep that in mind. If anybody is suffering through domestic violence, come on, there's resources. Get yourself safe, please.
There you go. Well said. And Ritz also well said here. New York brass knuckles. Melba is a queen. Yes, she is. Last but not least, the woman who will be with us for almost all this coverage, because she is the professor. Someone pointed out that I was Gilligan from Gilligan's Island. She's a professor. She is a professor emerita at the University of Nebraska. Joe, your final thoughts tonight.
Yeah, mine are on the victim. Whatever Sarah Boone is or does or did or will do, the way he died was just absolutely horrendous. I mean, I can't imagine. I'm sure it was painful, but he also was in a suitcase knowing he was dying. It's so, I can't even find the words for it. And so I want to really focus on him, because it's pretty easy to focus on her, because she's so unusual and she's created so many crazy things already, but ultimately he's the victim and he suffered a really horrific death. And that's where I guess I would end.
Really well said. And I'm glad you did say that. Bernie Heaven, thank you for that. Thank you to these amazing guests. COE, I don't know if there's a way to redirect people if they want to go. We are doing, as I said, the Menendez brothers in just a few short minutes. There's a big press conference. We're going to take it tomorrow. We don't even know what time it is yet, related to the Menendez brothers. We're going to try to, there's a motions hearing tomorrow morning in the Sarah Boone case, which the COE is going to try to stream. And we will get that all to you live. Follow me on Twitter at Podcast STS. Redirect is on. Thank you so much. Love you. Love you, Miami, Atlanta, Jersey, and everyone out there. Be safe.